feel it. Oh my God, this is like the doctor all over again.
Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. No.
Come on, be a big girl, baby.
That didn't hurt. That didn't hurt. That didn't hurt. That didn't hurt. That didn't hurt.
May 14th, 2020. 23-year-old Phoenicia Ratliff was almost home when her ex-husband ambushed and abducted her at gunpoint. Just days earlier, a restraining order was placed on him, hoping to keep Phoenicia safe. But by the next morning, she was dead. Police chased the man down in a high-speed pursuit, but when they finally cornered him, he did the unthinkable. He executed Phoenicia in cold blood, then turned the gun on himself. The police were immediately haunted by the mystery of what could have led to this devastating tragedy. But what they found next was shocking. This is the haunting story of Phoenicia Ratliff.
Somebody cute. Oh. Janae.
Her story takes us to the small city of Canton, Mississippi, a place that was known for its rich cultural heritage and as a backdrop for several major motion pictures. Canton paints the picture of a quiet, close-knit community where life moves at a slower pace. But behind its peaceful facade, Canton has a crime rate that is 32.9% higher in violent crimes compared to the national average. And these haunting statistics would reflect on the tragedy that would soon befall on Phoenicia. Phoenicia Ratliff was born on August 7, 1996, to Suzanne Ratliff and Fitzgerald Otto. Phoenicia was raised in Canton in a large, close-knit family built on love, care, and a deep-rooted sense of self-sufficiency. Surrounded by 4 siblings, she grew up in an environment filled with support, one that shaped her into a warm, nurturing soul who left a lasting impression on everyone she met.
Even if you didn't know her, you would know that she was just a wonderful person because her personality was
so
just,
loving.
Wonderful.
It has been hard. We're still trying to accept it. That's why we can't go a day without trying to do something to remember her by.
Phoenicia was more than just warm-hearted. She was driven, focused, and deeply committed to the things that mattered most for her. From an early age, she understood the power of education and how it could shape her future. Determined to build a life of purpose, she attended Canton High School, where she began laying the foundation for her academic journey. After graduating, her aspirations only grew stronger, leading her to enroll at Jackson State University. There, she pursued a degree in early childhood education, a path that reflected both her nurturing spirit and her desire to make a lasting impact on the lives of others. Phoenicia poured her energy into her studies, determined to reach the goal she had set for herself. She was on a track to graduate in December 2020, a milestone that symbolized not only her hard work, but the bright future she was so close to achieving. The road to the fulfillment of her dreams, however, was not easy. While pursuing her education, Phoenicia also took on the demanding task of working to support herself, holding jobs at both Subway and Walmart. Working while studying is not an easy endeavor to pull off, but as she is determined to build and establish a bright future, the 23-year-old did it with a smile. Phoenicia's journey to her dream is already challenging, but it becomes even more complex when she falls in love. It was with a man who would change everything. That man was the 24-year-old named Jamarquis Black. Phoenicia met Jamarquis back in Canton High School when they were both in their high school days. It was during a time in her life when everything seemed to be falling into place. In the beginning, everything felt like a dream. It was the kind of love that could be seen in movies, full of whispered secrets, late-night texts, and promises that felt eternal. And Phoenicia, ever the optimist, believed in love with the same intensity that she believed in her future. And with Jamarquis by her side, she truly believed she could have both, a strong relationship and the life she was building from the ground up. But what Phoenicia didn't know was that she was stepping into something far more dangerous than she could ever imagine. At first, there were no cracks to be seen. As they grew older, their high school romance deepened. Jamarquis became a steady presence not just in her life, but in her family's as well. He was there for birthdays, holidays, and weekend dinners. To everyone else, he was just a young man in love, and this scenario continued on for years. Jamarquis stood beside Phoenicia as she started with her higher education. He appeared to be everything a young woman could want: supportive, present, and proud of her achievements. To friends and family, he seemed like a good man, maybe even a great one. He wasn't flashy or overbearing, but this perfect romance would not last long. In the early months of 2019, Phoenicia and Jamarquis would receive life-changing news. Phoenicia was pregnant. She was in the middle of pursuing her bachelor's degree in early education when this news shook her world. For some, this might have felt like an obstacle in achieving their dreams, but not for Phoenicia. She embraced the news with courage and hope. Despite the untimely arrival of this motherhood, she welcomed it with open arms because, after all, she was with the love of her life, Jamarquis, by her side. But she was wrong. The moment she broke the news to Jamarquis, his reaction was not what she had expected. Instead of joy or excitement, he expressed his reservations. Jamarquis wasn't ready to be a father. His reaction was the complete opposite of what Phoenicia had imagined, especially since she had been more than ready to start a family with him, and this was when things began to change. The bond they had built over the years seemed to shift, and what should have been a moment of shared joy instead revealed a deepening divide between them. Phoenicia's decision to continue with the pregnancy, despite Jamarquis' objections, marked the beginning of a dark turn in their relationship. Behind closed doors, the dynamic shifted into something far more painful, an abusive relationship. But Phoenicia's social media portrayed something different. Photos and posts showed them smiling, sharing tender moments like any other expecting couple. All the while, the gaps in their relationship were slowly starting to get worse. On November 20th, 2018, Phoenicia gave birth to their beautiful daughter, whom they named Jordan Black. This marked a bittersweet moment for Phoenicia, because while she was overwhelmed with love for her daughter, her relationship with Jamarquis deteriorated even further. At one point, Jamarquis even accused Phoenicia of trapping him with a child, and so began the nightmare that would eventually end in an unimaginable tragedy. Phoenicia tried to hold things together for the sake of their daughter, who was just born. She believed that maybe things would still work out between the man that she fell in love with, but instead of healing, things only worsened. Jamarquis started controlling Phoenicia. Anytime they had an argument, Jamarquis would take the baby to his father's house. Sometimes he would keep her there for days, withholding the child until Phoenicia behaved the way he wanted. It became a vicious cycle of emotional blackmail, one Phoenicia endured in silence. She endured everything: motherhood, her toxic relationship, continuing her education. All the while, she worked 2 jobs. Phoenicia was really determined to pursue the future that she envisioned for her daughter. But this ambition only made Jamarquis furious. He would constantly belittle her for staying in school, claiming she'd been enrolled for too long. He pushed her to quit and tried to convince her she couldn't juggle both school and motherhood. And when Phoenicia did not comply, his obsession with controlling her grew even worse. Because of that, Jamarquis began stalking her. He would follow her to Jackson State University and walk into her classrooms just to make sure she was really there. He followed her to work and walked into her place of employment to start arguments in front of customers. And on several terrifying occasions, he even climbed through the window of her home just to watch her while she slept. Through all of this, Phoenicia stayed. But it wasn't long until she grew tired of this never-ending cycle of abuse from Jamarquis. By the beginning of spring 2020, Phoenicia made a decision that would set off a devastating chain of events. Phoenicia finally broke up with Jamarquis, a courageous decision to finally choose herself and take off one baggage that was holding her down. But this breakup was something that enraged Jamarquis. To him, it meant that his control over her was gone. And that's when Jamarquis' behavior spiraled into something even worse than before. Jamarquis started to demand full custody of Jordan. He pushed for it despite the shared custody that Phoenicia allowed him to have. He insisted that he alone should raise their daughter, even though Phoenicia had always been the primary caregiver, and so she stood her ground. But Jamarcus didn't take rejection well. He was so adamant to get Jordan all to himself that he started harassing Phoenicia to try and wear her down. This harassment would reach a violent point on April 28, 2024. That day, while Phoenicia was at work at Subway, she had just arrived at her workplace when Jamarcus walked in with a gun in his hand. He then threatens Phoenicia that if she doesn't give up the full custody of their child to him, he will finish it for her. It was a traumatizing morning for Phoenicia. Fortunately, a policeman was patrolling the area when Jamarcus was harassing the poor 23-year-old. And it wasn't long until Jamarcus was arrested on charges of domestic violence and felony stalking. The arrest gave Phoenicia a sense of relief, thinking that she would finally be able to be at peace with Jamarcus being in jail. But that peace wouldn't last long. On May 11th, 2020, Jamarcus posted 10% of the $15,000 bond for the charges he received for harassing Phoenicia. He was then released and able to walk free on the streets again. But this freedom wasn't without its conditions. Upon being released, Jamarcus was informed that he would not be allowed to make any form of contact towards Phoenicia, a restraining order that should have ensured the safety of both Phoenicia and her daughter. But like with so many protective measures that rely on paper instead of enforcement, it wasn't enough. Just 3 days after Jamarcus's release, his violence would reach a devastating climax. On the evening of May 14, 2020, the unthinkable happened. As Phoenicia was preparing for work that day, she was unaware of the sinister plan that her ex-boyfriend and the father of her child had laid out. She clocked into her shift at Subway that afternoon, like any other day. She had no way of knowing it would be her last shift, her final few hours spent laughing with coworkers, handling sandwiches, and dreaming about graduation just months away. That night, at around 11 p.m., Phoenicia returned home late, just like she had so many times before. Her mother, Suzanne, and her 21-year-old sister, Alexandria, were waiting on the porch, ready to greet her. But before they could even welcome Phoenicia home, the night turned into a nightmare. Just as she was slowly inching toward her home, a man emerged from behind the tree near Phoenicia's house. It was Jamarcus, who was holding a gun. He had been there all night, waiting for Phoenicia to come home, armed, angry, and planning.
Good afternoon, I'm Andrew Harrison. We are following breaking news for you. Canton man out on bond for domestic violence charge is accused of kidnapping his ex-girlfriend, driving her all the way to Boca Chica.
Before Phoenicia could even react to the danger that was approaching, Jamarcus had already drawn his weapon, threatening Phoenicia. With her life in danger, Phoenicia could do nothing but comply with the request of the raging man in front of her. Jamarcus then tried to force Phoenicia to get into the vehicle that was parked nearby. It was a terrifying scene, an abduction unfolding right in front of their very home. But it was made even worse because Phoenicia's family was there, witnessing everything. As Phoenicia was being dragged into the car, Alexandria ran to stop Jamarcus from taking her sister away. But before she even got near the two, Jamarcus aimed his gun towards Alexandria and shot her in the thigh. As Alexandria's wound bled, she collapsed to the ground in pain. Jamarcus wasted no time. He forced Phoenicia inside the vehicle and sped away from the scene before anyone could stop him. Meanwhile, Suzanne, who was left in shock by the speed of the events that happened, rushed to her injured daughter and called 911. It wasn't long before the police and paramedics arrived at Suzanne's house. But by the time the authorities arrived, Jamarcus and Phoenicia were already gone. So the police immediately launched a search for the two. But there was one problem. No one, not even her mother and injured sister, knew where Jamarcus could have taken Phoenicia. Alexandria was rushed to the hospital and, fortunately, she survived the altercation. Meanwhile, the police combed the streets, searching every possible route Jamarcus could have taken, but it was all to no avail because no signs of Jamarcus were found. Throughout the night, the police began tracking Jamarcus's movements through the pings of his phone's location. However, this proved to be difficult as the cell towers provided inaccurate data. Even then, they continued. What they didn't realize was that the nightmare was only the beginning. Jamarquis wasn't just running. He was following a plan far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. The following morning, on May 15, 2020, hours after Phoenicia's abduction, Suzanne would receive a chilling phone call. It was around 6 a.m. when her phone rang, and on the other end of the line was Jamarquis. He demanded that Suzanne take their baby to his aunt's house, all the while promising that he would release and bring back Phoenicia when that was done. And so, hoping that her daughter would get home safely, Suzanne complied with Jamarquis' demands and dropped off Jordan at his aunt's house. Little did she know that what she did would do nothing to change the tragedy that was coming up. Hours later, the police had finally located Jamarquis in the Philadelphia area, and it wasn't long until a Mississippi Highway Patrol trooper located his black vehicle on Interstate 55 South. He was flagged, but it was clear that he wasn't planning to stop. A high-speed chase ensued, with officers trailing him across county lines as the tension mounted by the minute. During the pursuit, Suzanne received another phone call. When she picked it up, it was Phoenicia on the other end, but Suzanne heard words that no mother should ever hear from her own daughter. Not long after that call, something unexpected happened. Jamarquis' vehicle crashed near the 30-mile marker in Bogue Chitto, Mississippi. Jamarquis had lost control of the vehicle and veered off the road. The police immediately took this opportunity to surround the area. Right then and there, Jamarquis was cornered and had nowhere else to go. But even with nowhere to run, Jamarquis refused to surrender. He stayed inside the vehicle with Phoenicia, locking the doors and ignoring officers' commands to come out. What words were exchanged between Phoenicia and Jamarquis in those moments will remain unknown, because what he did next was shocking. In a final act of desperation, Jamarquis shot Phoenicia in the head, ultimately killing her. But he didn't stop there. Just moments later, he turned the gun on himself and killed himself. The standoff ended in a devastating silence. When officers finally approached the mangled vehicle, they found what they feared the most. Inside, both Phoenicia Ratliff and Jamarquis Black were dead from gunshot wounds. The scene was grim, a heartbreaking conclusion to a relentless search. There was nothing left to do but secure the area and begin the painstaking task of notifying the family. Not long after, the authorities arrived at Suzanne's workplace to deliver the devastating news. The moment the door opened and Suzanne saw the officer's face, she knew that it was something terrible. They confirmed her worst nightmare. Phoenicia was gone. This news came crashing down on Suzanne and all who knew Phoenicia. They couldn't fathom how their beloved Phoenicia was taken in an instant, all because of a selfish desire to gain control and possess what was never his to own. Within hours, the story spread fast, grabbing the nation's attention and leaving viewers shaken. For those who knew her, seeing her life reduced to a headline only deepened the heartbreak.
My job to get me something to drink, and he opened the door, and his facial expression, and I said, he shot her, and he said yes. And I said, is he dead?
I love my niece to death. There's nothing I wouldn't do for my family. And I wasn't even able to be there for to try to help her. I'm so proud of her. She took a bullet for her sister. She was willing to die to try to save her sister. She tried to be civil with him. That didn't work.
Phoenicia was laid to rest at Onisha Burke's Memory Garden Cemetery in Canton, Madison County, Mississippi. Family, friends, classmates, and even strangers came together not just to grieve, but to celebrate who Phoenicia was. The most heartbreaking part of all this was her young daughter, too little to understand, who will grow up without a single memory of the mother who loved her deeply. Phoenicia's story is a stark reminder that some people are not ready for the weight of lifelong commitment, let alone the responsibility of bringing a child into the world. Her death shows us the dangers of entering relationships without the maturity and responsibility needed, as it can destroy not just lives, but futures. Let us know what you think about this case in the comments below.